Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our first virtual community input meeting for Super Neighborhood 17. I'm Tiffany Thomas. I'm your council member for District F, and I am very honored to serve you in this capacity. Unfortunately, our plans did not go as we intentioned, where we would meet face to face so we can have our first meeting since the election. But here is technology, and we're still able to meet today. So I appreciate each of you for taking the time out tonight to hear a little bit more about what's happening in the district besides Corona. And we will get to that pretty shortly. I do want to acknowledge my team, the District F staff members that are on the call, Ida Lead, Long, Torrance, and Sherelle, and they'll be helping facilitate the conversation tonight. And again, feel free to raise your question in the chat box or raise your hand in the bubble. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Sherelle, next slide. So before I mention about District F, I just want to highlight Super Neighborhood 17. And interestingly enough, many people, and I realize this on the campaign trail, many people were not familiar with super neighborhoods. So just a brief history for those of us in the room that may not be. The reason why we aligned with our super neighborhoods is because these groups, this is the only city designated and city recognized group that was, it's part of our city charter, but then Mayor Lee Brown initiated super neighborhoods. And the reason why these super neighborhoods are important is the genesis is for them to inform city around planning and ideas and projects, because we all know that our neighborhoods are distinctly different throughout the city, and we all have different needs and different priorities. And so, you know, many people, while campaigning, everyone wanted a new task force or a new group or a new advisory group. And I really wanted to, one, be efficient with the organizations we already had in place, and then drive activity to them. So this is one of the ways that our council office will be driving activity and participation in terms of community engagement is through our super neighborhood. And if you receive our newsletter, you will see consistent standing meetings, which will be the Midwest, the West Side PIP, and our super neighborhood meetings, because we want to be able to support y'all in leading charge in your area. So this slide is just a high level of contact information. My direct contact information is there, all of our staff members, and a high level update about District F, about our community. This information can be found on our district page as well. And I'm sure after the 2020 census, the demographics and numbers will change. But I think it's important to share this information, because oftentimes we believe our limited community is the broader district. And as a resident of A-Leaf, I know people think that A-Leaf is the only neighborhood within District F. And so even though I'm a proud resident and proud A-Leaf ISD graduate, I'm very clear that there are distinct neighborhoods that have just as competing interests as anyone else. And so we have 3 super neighborhoods. What's unique about Super Neighborhood 17 is that there are 2 council districts that they represent, which is District G, which is north of Westheimer, and District F, which is south of Westheimer. And so much of the information that you'll hear is beneficial citywide, but we're going to highlight many of our specific Super Neighborhood 17 District F projects. And just some other additional highlights for Super Neighborhood 17, the variety of school districts in terms of HPD units, Midwest station, HPD stations, and just the boundaries, so you can be familiar with the area we're going to cover. Next slide. So here's a quick coronavirus update. And, initially, again, did not anticipate our first 100 days walking into a global pandemic, but here we are. And I believe that we are, as in the leadership of the city, we're doing the very best with the information that we have at the time. And frankly, this information is changing hour by hour. And we're having to make very critical decisions about, how we get through this. So earlier today, Harris County Judge Hidalgo and the mayor, and I believe Governor Abbott earlier today, extended the stay home, work safe order. That is now through April 30th. Initially, Governor Abbott extended an order through April 3rd, and today extended it through the 30th. And what the difference is, particularly with his order. So the first time it did not include churches as being essential. Effective tomorrow, I believe churches are now essential. And so I don't know if y'all have been following. I'm sure you've been following. There was a lawsuit that was filed to challenge the First Amendment right. And so Governor Abbott made some adjustments. And so I'm just going to encourage each of you. I know I've personally called my father and asked him not to go to church because of pre-existing conditions that he has. And I will talk more about the numbers in our testing, but we have not hit our peak yet. And we have not hit our peak. And I just want to make sure that everyone is clear that we have to continue practicing these guidelines, practicing hygiene, and just getting comfortable with staying in our own personal domains. That does not mean that you cannot go outside. I went for a great 3-mile walk yesterday, but we are asking people to be mindful of the space you occupy with others. So we are anticipating through April 30th, schools will be closed through the 4th of May. We continue to offer core services. And we have a council meeting tomorrow. And I think as we continue to figure out what this means for our city, there are several requests from several employees about being designated as non-essential. So there's things that we're working through as a city in terms of how we're operating during this time. So I want to be transparent with you about that, just so you know that there might be some changes. But I will say last week there was 2 weeks ago, the Asia Chamber of Commerce made it was a donation worth of $42,000 in supplies and materials. So we were able to make sure that our first responders, our medical personnel, all of those individuals had protective gear as they are frontline with this issue during this time. And then we had a donation from Farouk Shami, who he's the founder of the Chi Iron. So for us ladies out there that use hair products, he made a donation of hand sanitizers. We've been passing out throughout our city departments, making sure that city departments had enough hand sanitizer and materials for them to protect themselves. Next slide. So as city council, we get briefed every day and in the evening. And so this is a high level report. And I want to give context to the numbers that you're reading, particularly around our sites. So the city of Houston, we have one official site. The second one will go live tomorrow. This is only reporting that site. This is not reporting the county or the additional site from Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee on the north side of town. And so those numbers are being reported in batch form, but in our site, here are the numbers. And so if this was last night, and if you just go down to the city of Houston in terms of 309, 23 by yesterday, 23 of those new cases came back. So collectively, we have tested a little over 2,000 at that particular site. The new site that opens up tomorrow, which is a city site that is at no cost, continued no cost, we will be prepared to test 250 a day. I believe it's a similar model with the county, but this is the update that council members receive every evening. So in context, just to let you know, we haven't hit our peak. And so, and then at the bottom, you'll see that the department announced an additional 68 new cases. So it brings our total to 377. And we did have another passing. It's our 4th passing, I believe, today. Next slide. So the mandatory quarantine, this was also, Governor Abbott extended this as well. Anyone traveling from California, Louisiana, Washington State, Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, and Miami, Florida must quarantine. The DPS is involved and they are tracking the individuals. And just to let you know, period, if you present with symptoms, and you do not need a ventilator, you are asked to quarantine, period. And so, everyone's symptoms are at different levels. And so this is the standard practice for many of the people that are testing positive. We're sending them home to quarantine to get well. For those, and that's why it's important that people practice social distancing. So for those who need ventilators, we will have space and machines and equipment and space available for them to have that type of healthcare if necessary. But you can see if anyone is traveling, that's spring break, any type of family function, we're asking them to quarantine and to notify, and the DPS is involved in that. We had a press conference earlier today, and this is just an update of that information. We do have several City of Houston employees, from first responders to someone who worked in the library, that have tested positive. And so we're working through that, preparing that information. This slide, we have 4 deaths since we've updated this slide. So there's been 4 tests. Next slide. So let me just add, last Thursday, there was a press conference, and we were talking about the donation that we received. And just to give you context about in terms of cost. So we borrowed against ourselves. We took $5 million from our Economic Development Stability Fund to go ahead and purchase the PPEs necessary to get ahead of the federal government's shipment, because we weren't clear when they were shipping, how much they were shipping, and we wanted to do everything we could do to put our city in the best position. So a PPE, an N95 mask, which was once 50 cents, now it's $5 per mask. So it is, and the day before it was $4. So it's costing the city a pretty penny to do this, and there's actually a company that wouldn't accept the bid because they changed the price in 24 hours from a $4 to a $5. So there's some challenges, that financial challenges, that we're having some hard conversations about, but we're doing what's necessary in order to make sure that we have what's needed in order to have these testing sites. So we do, I don't know if we have any, I don't see any questions. Are there any questions? I don't see any. Are there any hands raised? Sherelle?
No questions.
What? Wow. Okay. So back to the basics of District F. So when I ran, I really built a campaign off of the issues that I heard, and then issues that I experienced as being a resident in the area too. So one, it's public safety, economic development, neighborhood revitalization, youth programming, and intervention. And so with public safety, in addition to making sure that we have police, what I would hear a lot of is, do we have enough street lighting? Do people feel safe walking in their neighborhood? So some built environment, basic things that we can do. In terms of economic development, making sure that we have high skill, high wage, that we clean up the areas and some of those commercial areas that may not be the best business for us to have in our communities, and just clean up our areas so businesses will come. Neighborhood revitalization, the illegal dumping, the graffiti, the trash, emerging pockets of homelessness, apartment complex and bad business owners, bad neighbors, from single family homes to multifamily homes that have really just let the neighborhood go. So we're really, focusing in on blight in those issues within the district. And then last, definitely not least, is youth programming. We have a lot of young people in District F, but there's really nothing to do. And the neighborhood has changed completely. You know, malls are out of style. When I was growing up, you know, West Oaks Mall was a pretty big thing. We had a lot, you know, we had job opportunity. It was, and, you know, movie theaters, all of that. But the time and the generation has changed. And so we need to make sure that the programming that the city has, such as the Mayor's Summer Job Program, that we extend out to District F. District F is the second or the lowest performing district in terms of summer jobs. And the mayor has created 15,000 jobs for young people, 16 to 24. And so we've been doing all that we can to make sure that young people have a place to go this summer to learn a skill, professional development, personal development, because we know that when they are at work, they're not being mischievous in our neighborhood, and we're focusing that on attention and something that's beneficial to them and to us. So these are the same priorities that we're rolling into the office in terms of what we're focusing on, the committees I serve on, and what we're calling a priority. So some of the concerns that I've heard before being in office, and y'all have seen this before, you know, water leaks, drainage, the streets, beautification, the after-hour clubs, trafficking, ditch maintenance, of course, crime. You know, those are the things that can fall into a variety of those categories. So we've been addressing this, and by organizing our work and making sure that these issues were addressed as soon as we came on board. Okay, funding projects. So this is when we get to the good stuff, the money. So before I was elected to the city council seat, you know, I realized that sometimes projects would show up in a neighborhood, but we never had a clear idea of how projects were designated or prioritized. And so I thought it was important for us to share what the process is so you can be aware. So one of the first things that when we got into office, we asked our super neighborhood chairs and our HOA chairs to send to our office projects that were submitted in the past but were not adopted. And we received a series of items. The deadline was February 2nd. So we have council district service funds. So as a district council member, I received $750,000 designated for District F. Now, that could be for small projects such as sidewalks, speed cushion, traffic signals, hiking bike trails, things along those lines. Beautification projects, they're very district specific and not a capital improvement project. 500,000 of the 750 are metro projects. So metro projects, that's designated funding, that's particularly around speed bumps, sidewalks, those bus bins, those areas. And then the 250,000 is what we call the general operating funds. And out of those general funds, traffic signals and other type of projects emerge. So, Cheryl, can we go to the process of the CIP? So here's the process of the CIP and then the cycle in order for a project to be vetted. So essentially, if your project's less than 15,000, we meet with we see if legal will approve it, if it's something that we can legally do with those funds. And then we'll work with the department that it relates to. For instance, if it's a request for new equipment or new playground equipment at a park, we'll work with the department, see when the department is able to facilitate that, when they're able to designate staff and time to that. The department pays for the project first. Once the project is paid for, then the funds are transferred from our office to the department, and then it's zeroed out. So what we were able to do was identify all of those projects. We followed up with each one that was already ongoing, and we identified the start date. When does this begin? How much does this cost? And what's the timeline for completion? So we can provide meaningful updates to all of you. And so what you can expect from our office is that once a project is approved, that you will receive an update, a confirmation once it's approved through legal, and it'll have an initiation date, which is tentative, but you'll have an idea and you'll understand how much it costs and the timeline, so you can know when to expect this to happen. And so thus far, we are moving very quickly with a lot of sidewalk projects. So with to that point, it was important that we centralized requests, because what we realized was that we had individuals in neighborhood making similar requests, and we had HOAs making requests on behalf of the neighborhood, and there was no communication. So we created a council district service form. And at the bottom of this slide, you'll see that link. Sherelle, are you ready to hit the link? And so this link will be available. We'll email it out, of course, but it's also on our district webpage. And so this is just a high level Google document, nothing too complicated, way so we can have a centralized portal of all this information, in the case that, one, we want to be able to articulate what our priorities are and have as much information about this project so we can be efficient. But then secondly, many, great minds think alike, and there's probably other people in your community that are asking for the same thing. So if we had this documented, we will be able to basically scratch our projects that are duplicates if they're already asking for, so there's not confusion within the office. So it's just a basic: who are you? What's your phone number? Where do you live? How much you're requesting? And some of that information is not required in terms of amount, because you may not know the amount. The program or project costs will be verified through the department we're working with, unless it's something similar. For example, Super Neighborhood 25, A-Leaf, they do a empty shelter project where they do the spayed and neutered with the neighborhood animals, and people come from all over the city. We are going to partner with them to do something similar in 2020. So that's like a flat fee type of thing in terms of a contribution. If there's matching funds, we want to know if, are there partners a part of this, like a Spark Park? If there's any outstanding funding requests, we want to make sure that this is not, particularly if it's a community type thing, that the city is not the sole funder of it, because we have limited funds and we want to stretch that. And if we have some corporate partners, we would love to partner with them to stretch those dollars. If there's a budget available, we would appreciate that, particularly for community-facing events, so we can know where these funds are going, that we're not paying staff salaries or stipends to people, but that we are, for instance, supporting a neighborhood cleanup with supplies and, materials for that. And so you can see, we don't have to go through the whole document, but I want you to know that this is available to every resident in the district. And Super Neighborhood, Jeff, y'all can feel free to share this information out, or if as an organization, if there's some projects that y'all want to offer, you can submit as a Super Neighborhood, and we will receive that, and then we'll have a history of projects. Because I will tell you, assuming this role, there was no central place of information where projects were adopted or discussed, and we didn't have history, and we wanted to be able to start something new. Okay, next. Any questions around that?
We do have one question,
Okay.
just to go back to with regards to coronavirus, and it's from Mr. Baker.
Okay.
He asked, is it too early to tell if coronavirus costs are going to push back major projects? For example, the West Park expansion project, like they experienced during Hurricane Harvey?
Right, very good question. So currently, construction and infrastructure, they are essential. So what's distinctly different with Harvey is that was water. And so we had a physical barrier from the work that we were able to do. And with Corona, that's what's so, eerie about it, is that we don't know. We can't see it. We can't touch it. And so with rain, we know when that subsides. We know when flooding ends. And so I think depending on when we peak, I don't believe we have, depending on when we peak and when the governor, and if the governor redesignates construction as essential, I don't know. I don't know. I do think it's possibly too soon, because it's a ever-changing type of deal.
And just to follow up, is it a matter of the money being used for Harvey instead of the construction?
I don't understand it. Is it a matter of the money being used for Harvey instead of the construction? What do you
Tiffany,
mean?
can I speak?
Sure, go ahead.
It's just that when Harvey happened, all the money that had been allocated for projects was used for recovery from Harvey, and so the
Sure.
projects did not.
Sure, I see what you're saying. Yes, like all of our capital improvement, right. So no, I think work may stop. So let's back up. Right. So we had a budget and finance meeting today, and I don't know if y'all watched that on Houston TV. And so we're in the process of getting ready to do our budget. And so we're still waiting on receipts from February, sales tax and all of that. So I think, until we see the next 3 months, until we fully see what March and April and May, especially with these orders, that would be an indicator on what we do in the pivot. Because I will tell you, we're voting tomorrow on a $5 million stability transfer to do that very thing, right? To respond to this crisis. We also voted last week to renegotiate airline contracts with the Houston airport system. And so, none of us have seen this before. So Controller Brown, was offering, making points about the budget, and it's something that we're taking very seriously. And so even though it's conservative in terms of what our fund balance is, by our city ordinance, it's a 7.5. That's what our baseline is. And so we maintain at 8%. And we were able to receive a $5 million from the Federal Health and Human Services, which responded to some of those needs, but we're going to be in a pinch for a while. And we're not sure on the implications of projects. We have no idea. We're not clear on what that means in terms of city employees, right? We're not clear on what that means. We are in the process of the zero-based budgeting, and our council office even went through the practice of zero-based budgeting and looking at like the bottom line, bare bones, all the way to the top. And so there are different scenarios that we're just waiting to see, because we don't know what the true financial impact is, not just of the city, but the business industry around us, oil and gas, restaurant, our convention center. Houston First laid off 60%. They furloughed 60% of their workforce last week. So it's ever changing, and we're not on the other side of it yet. So I'm unable to fully answer that at this point.
Okay, and we have one other question from Mr. Greg A. Mr.
Okay.
Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. One of my questions that you were mentioning the public safety, and that related to your District F specific expenses, and trying to, the short question is,
Sure.
We have people. I live on a corner. I'm in a
Sure.
neighborhood,
Sure.
and there's two things. We have
Sure.
people constantly using us as a cut through,
Mm.
and we cannot get speed bumps on our road, on our street, because it's a emergency transport lane. But I have never seen an ambulance or
Right.
a fire
Right.
truck go across our street. They always come down the other street. And I apologize for the barking dog.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
And the other thing is that, we're in an older neighborhood. A lot of the neighborhoods around here are older,
Sure.
but
Sure.
like because we're on a corner, and I know the roads are made to flood, the street, it continues to sink and fall and pull. And I can tell you, we've had foundation work done 5 times on our house.
Yeah.
And a
wow.
lot of it is the street and the drainage system pulling it
Yeah.
down
Yeah. Yeah.
and causing the problems. And we were supposed to have our street rebuild. It got delayed because of Harvey. How do we go about trying to look at speed bumps, but as well as having the city look at the drainage I can't imagine. It's like a 3-foot drop from
Sure.
the middle to the drains. on either
Sure.
side, and that's
Sure.
on all four corners, and we all have had foundation issues
Sure.
and everything else.
Sure. So Greg, may I ask what neighborhood you're in?
We're in Ashton Village.
Okay, I know exactly. I looked at a house over there. I know exactly where you're at. So I love that little neighborhood. Okay, so if you'll allow me, I'm gonna connect you to Long. If you can notate that. So what we've been doing with other neighborhoods is initiating studies. And the CIP that's rolling out, that meeting that we weren't able to have, the two priorities the mayor has is, one is the drainage and the street repair. And so what we're in the process of doing with Public Works is identifying where in District F are those priority projects listed. And so if you will allow us a couple of days, it might be that your street and that corridor is already on the list. So in the past, CIP projects were really pet projects of council members that they were able to offer up, right? And kind of lobby whatever mayor was elected at the time. So years ago, that kind of pivoted. And so now they're looking more at data, like where do we get more flooding incidents more than ever in the city? Where do we have all this street repair, this kind of patchwork? Let's look at something long term. So he's rolling out a citywide street repair, panel replacement, all of that, gutting it out. And then also with the drainage, we also have several meaningful drainage projects in District F. And so I wonder if maybe your issue is a SWAT program where they bring the area up to baseline versus capital improvement. So if you'll allow Long to get your contact information and give us some time, we can, in about 10 days, we can respond to you about that. Now, your question around the speed bump, we have Metro funds to do it. And so that's always a pushback, like, the fire department, or they'll say, oh, we got to have our fire trucks come through here. So what we've been doing is initiating these studies to get really clear about, is this, if we're able to do that. And we have been able to do that with some subdivisions around speed cushions. So not the traditional bumps we're used to, but these are cushions that fire trucks can go right over, and it doesn't interrupt their time to get to wherever they need to. So very good points. I want to verify where within District F your area falls, but I know it does somewhere.
Okay, and for like the request for the humps for the thing, should that come from our HOA or?
No, it doesn't have to. I mean, we just, with that form, you could fill that form out, and what we're going to have to do anyway. Of course, we'll alert the HOA so that, everyone can be aware, but we're going to have to do a study to see kind of where that's Public Works is going to come in and tell us where all those speed bumps, those speed cushions can be. So it can come from the HOA. We'll receive it, and we'll do our due diligence of making sure that HOA knows a resident requested this, just in case they have pending plans as well to submit something to the office.
And then one other question on
Sure.
I know you said about Public Works coming out and doing street repair. They've come out and they've put down little patches of asphalt.
Yep.
And I can tell you, having been here almost 15 years,
Yeah.
it's putting a Band-Aid on it.
Oh, yeah, that's all it is. Yeah.
And it's not, it really isn't helping. It's just causing more
Sure.
more sinkage through this. So, how do we is there a way to, keep them from, putting another 6 inches of asphalt down? That's just
right. And that's what the citywide street program is. And that's where they're gutting out the street and starting from scratch. That's what they're doing. And so because we weren't able to have our CIP, I'm not completely clear on where we fall in timeline and in order in terms of projects. But yes, for many of the streets in the city, they're going to get a gut job. And so they won't have that kind of Band-Aid, patchwork, spot work happening, because we know that's a consistent issue.
Okay.
So that's in progress. So give us like 10 days, and then we can circle back with some more details specifically around that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sherelle, anyone else?
No, ma'am. That's it.
What? We're doing great. So just to highlight two council district service fund projects in Super Neighborhood 17, we have the Hazy Park, which is being managed by Houston Public Works. It's currently in process, and the year is May 2020. For completion, Sherelle, or initiation?
Completion.
Completion is 2020. And so the second project is Shadow Lake Trail and Public Works. And so this was initiated, I want to say a couple of years ago, between the Houston Parks Board, the HOA, and the District F, before my time. And so it is $75,000 in order to do this. And we had a conference call last week. So I want to, on the couple of previous slides, we only have, in terms of general operating funds, what is that, 250,000. We only have $250,000. So we are currently working with them on when we need to schedule this, because Super Neighborhood 25, they have a project that costs 126. And these departments, they don't make a move until the money is fully there. And so we are trying to make sure that all of our streets and sidewalks and places where water is pooling, all of those low-hanging fruit maintenance projects, that we get those teed up and initiated. But in fiscal year 20, which we're currently in, and fiscal 21 begins July 1. The mayor also sent a memo out last week limiting spending. So as we anticipate the economic impact of not just our city, but how our city operates, funds are limited. And so my concern is what's going to happen with our district service funds in terms of that, because he's always looking at where to cut. And his philosophy is, if you're not using the money, then you must not need it. So we are feverishly initiating projects that are like 12,000 here, 19,000 here, so we can show activity in District F, so we can keep our funds. So we're still trying to figure out when we initiate this Shadow Lake, because if we do Shadow Lake at 75,000, the Bel Air Boone median at 126, that's it. We don't have any other funds to do any projects throughout the rest of the year that are not limited to the Metro funds. So we are attempting to become creative, and we're still working through that. Okay, so this is just a photo of the trail. And so really it's just a matter of purchasing some of the easement, and this trail will connect to the entire Brays Bayou Greenway. So once it's implemented, it'll be a great quality of life beautification project in the area that everyone in this community could take advantage of, and will definitely be, an asset to our area. So this is the second project, which is on Senate, which is Hazy Park to the West Side Hike and Bike. And so, y'all will have these slides and you can always look at this, but this is also what is in process too. Now, here are the CIP projects that are proposed in your area, the large one. And so we're familiar with the Shelfer City project. It's been pretty disruptive to many of those, particularly in the Shadow Lake area. And we've attempted to provide some up-to-date and current notes around that, mitigating the smell and the odor. And I live on Gary Ashford, so coming up, I would smell it as well. But you can see the department and the status that we're in, and then when we're looking at the year of completion. We've received notes from your, residents. And so continue, if there's something that happens, we're actively working with Public Works to make sure we can mitigate any issue, even though it's an inconvenience to have, streets cut off. All right, so this is just an update of the project. It's a $19 million project. It started last year. We're going to be completing in the fall of next year. And that's pretty much it. And you can, always monitor that project by signing up for the alerts. Any questions around your CDSF or your CIP projects?
We have nothing in the chat box. And no
What?
one's raised.
We're doing a great job. No questions. Okay, next slide. Right. So go ahead.
Councilman,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm using my phone, so
It's okay.
I can't raise my hand. My name's Kathy Kaufman. I'm the Shadow Lake HOA president,
Yes.
and we've met, but I don't think you remember. But
I do remember you at West Chase. I remember you.
Yes, that is correct. Well, very
Yes.
good.
Hello.
Excellent. Well, I wanted to ask, Jeff Baker had made the question about would the impact of the coronavirus, would it postpone our West Park completion project? And so I wanted to follow up on that question.
Yeah.
The original postponement was given, this was because it was on the CIP list. I don't remember which year it was, but it was taken off of the list. And the reason it was taken off the list was given that it received federal funding, and that federal funding would come in, it was like 4 to 5 years. So we basically had to wait another 4 to 5 years for that project. And so if it is receiving federal funding that's already been promised, then would that, my thought is, would that mean that it would not be threatened by this, certain, this current?
I would like, and I know exactly what you're saying, because if you already have designated funds from another source, then the project shouldn't be interrupted, right? Am I?
That's correct. And
Right.
and further, every time it gets postponed, the price goes up.
Of course. So I am not thoroughly clear on the status of that. So if you'll allow us to research this project and those funds, so we can get a sense too of really what's happening, because what we don't want to do is have our CIP projects continue to roll over next cycle, because CIP projects are essentially projects for the mayor institutes. That's not a council deal. We can advocate, but they make decisions based off of other information. And so if I'm able to articulate this project and what was communicated in the past, to make sure this is on the radar, because I'm not sure this is even on the radar, especially when we had our meetings with Public Works. This was not, oh, she's talking to TxDOT. Okay. So let us track this down, if you'll allow us to do that, so we can speak intelligently to status and kind of what's next. But just off of my knowledge base, I would assume if funding is already committed from a different source, why would the project be interrupted, right? But we don't know. I'm not sure.
Correct. I just wanted to let you know that's what was told to us. Sure. It received federal funding, and due to that, they took it off the CIP, and they were going to wait until the federal funding would come through, which was 4 to 5 years down the road. So anyway, just wanted to make sure you knew that.
No, that's good. That's good information. Thank you for that. That's helpful for us. And so y'all are aware that we have limited funds in the district office to do, lots of work, right? Our district is large. We saw the numbers, and we have many needs where pockets have been, just kind of left to the side for a long time. So we definitely need some revitalization. So one of the things that I want to propose, and one of the things that I immediately came into office looking at, is a hot team. District B and District K has a hot team. And so the number you see, it's less than that, but that's at a high point. So essentially, because we have an illegal dumping issue throughout the district, this would give us a focus team of 3 full-time assistants and a supervisor. Now, this goes through solid waste. They use a temporary, or not a temp agency, but a temp agency essentially. and they hire individuals, and we train them in District F to familiarize them with our area. And then they're our designated team to pick up trash, remove blight, all of that. What was being utilized in the past is that HPD has a major crimes division, and within that division, there's an environmental team. And so the district office in the past contributed $20,000 in overtime for them to pick up trash, or if there was an issue, to do that. And so for me, I want police on the street and in the neighborhoods. And so I always want to give you the pros and the cons to it. HPD is able to provide a citation if they catch the person. The hot team is able to, with the hot team, we'll have a dedicated team specifically for District F that's not able to do the citation. However, I'm having conversations with Department of Neighborhoods about subsidizing salary of a code enforcement officer. The city of Houston has 36 code enforcement officers. And so if we subsidize salary 20% or less, that person will be designated for our district, so we can then start those bad actors and start citating them and focusing on that, similar to what, you know, the West Chase district has been able to do in terms of just beautification, revitalization, and just having a local patrol. We'll have a local team. So we're still working through that. And we have limited funds, but we need to, you know, bandit signs, the, you know, Mike buys home signs that are all in the median, all of that needs to be picked up. And if we don't clean up our streets, business won't come, people don't feel like they value their neighborhood. So those are some of the things I want to propose for fiscal 20 and 21, anticipating all of our funds would be available. But I think, you know, trash would be picked up within 48, 72 hours. And then we can really change the culture about our community and what people are seeing. And then people are visual. They need to see trash being picked up. You know, they need to see things happening. And so we could figure it out for year one. And if it's not, I'll come back to the community and say, we need to go in a different direction. But we're working to make sure that we can have some visible things happen in our area. Okay. So community events, one of the things that I would hear, of course, beautification, revitalization. I mentioned like neighborhood cleanups. Each super neighborhood identified a problem area that they would like to tackle. And of course, we're gonna schedule this for the fall, but in 17, we looked at between West Park and Derry Ashford, the southeast corner. And Jeff, did Barbara Quattro send you that LISC mini grant to apply for?
No, I don't believe she did.
Okay.
I had told Long that West Park and Derry Ashford's a private parking lot. I'm not sure if we should use volunteers for that or just get the parking lot to continue to clean it up.
Sure.
The developer there.
Yeah, and we can do that too. And so what we, want to do is, there's some corporate partners that have reached out and they're interested in sponsoring some things. So just in an effort for us to, raise our profile as a community. And we have a lot of corporations and small businesses here. And I don't believe that they're not interested in partnering with us. I'm just not sure the ask has been made, but I think there's something, people would participate in this with their gloves and lawnmower in the city. We can provide our resources and partner with Keep Beautiful Houston and do a variety of things. So again, changing the culture, allowing neighbors to come out. And I believe that we're all doing our part individually, and we'll be able to do a lot more collectively. And these have been, some problem areas. I know specifically for 20 and 25, I think 20, there's a strip club in that area. So we're working with them around that. So there's just some things that we're attempting to do. I know 25 applied to a LISC mini grant to purchase like a shovel, materials so they could keep in their shed. And so that's, we will be able to support it in a variety of ways. So looking forward to rolling that out in the fall and having that, doing that at least twice a year. Okay. So we were going to have the people's pop-ups. I'll go back to the slide. Every 5th Saturday, we were going to have a people's pop-up just to get out into the community and let people know that we were here. So we'll reschedule May, of course, but we're going to focus on literacy, healthy eating, workforce solutions, and the mayor summer jobs. So some of those dates are in flux, but every 5th Saturday we were going to show up at an apartment complex, a grocery store, and just kind of do some grassroots on the ground constituent engagement. Okay, so today is Census Eve. Tomorrow is Census Day. If you have not completed your census, you should have received an envelope in the mail by March 12th, I believe. And it has a unique code that's specific to you. Census dollars are critical. District F is listed number 5 as undercounted in the county, and so we're projected as number 5. So we're currently working out what our numbers are in terms of statistics. We are beating Dallas slightly. We have an edge, and District D has probably the highest returns within the city. So if a council district had an award, it would be District D. So as you know, we have many multifamily units in District F, and our apartments don't do too well with responding, particularly during this time where apartments are threatening eviction. It is imperative that people are in place in their home. We need every dollar for every head during this time, particularly as we go through rebuilding our city after this coronavirus. So I don't have to tell y'all, it's census. You can do it online. Check your mail, and it doesn't matter how you got here, why you got here, but if you are living in the United States of America, we need to know that you are counted. So that is that. Any others? So stay in communication with us. Our newsletter, if you don't receive our newsletter, please sign up. You can follow us on social media. We share the same information. We also send weekly notes to our HOA and super neighborhood leaders, just really quick things, just so they can share in their monthly meeting. We're going to do a better job of including agenda items so y'all can be clear about what's coming down the pipe that's specifically related to District F. I will tell you tomorrow we're voting on that $5 million transfer for the stabilization fund for Corona. We are also approving some housing items. I'm chair of Housing and Community Affairs for the city, which includes solid waste, homelessness, veterans, and a dotted line of complete community. So there's some things around our land bank that we're approving. We're moving forward on Disaster Relief Fund 17 with multifamily developments in Houston, and we're now going to focus on our single family developments, so with the general land office. So that's what we're doing. Please stay in contact with us. Our information, you can reach out to any staff member and you'll receive a reply. We would love your email so we can keep you included. And that's all I have. Any other questions? That's our website, our phone number, and of course our email. Any questions?
I've just got one more thing. Has the
Sure.
city considered purchasing something to raise concrete panels that are uneven? Greg had mentioned it. We've got some roads out here that are sinking on the edges to where if they could just pump them up like the concrete raising companies do, that might at least be a temporary fix. Have they thought about doing that?
Right. That's why I don't know if it's in the SWAT, if it's the SWAT department that does that, which is kind of like a group that brings that smaller projects. That's not a capital improvement. If there's a drainage or street or whatnot that needs to come up to baseline, that's what they do. And we submit projects to them in May. But what we would have to go back, Sherelle and I would have to go and investigate where's District F kind of on that timetable, and if that location Greg mentioned by his home is on that list. And so if it's not, then we can initiate some type of study which doesn't take too long, and for Public Works to kind of identify what's the best solution. So we can do that. Because we didn't have our CIP, I don't have that information. And what we did, we just presented to y'all like the large projects that are happening, but we need to look at their kind of long-term plan about what they plan on doing in District F. But that might be a
Okay, thanks.
solution. We just don't know that. I just don't know at this point.
Okay, I didn't know if they had the equipment to raise it without totally replacing it or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure until I ask them. Yeah, that's not a question I've asked them in the past, so I could do that. Anyone else? Any other questions?
We have no questions in the chat.
What? 1 hour, that's it. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your questions. Thank you for spending your evening with us within this quick hour. I am honored to represent the residents in District F, and we're doing our very best under these circumstances. And so as always, feel free to reach out and inquire if there's any questions or whatnot. We'll be more than willing to respond. And if we don't have the answer, we definitely will investigate it for you. Again, we are recording this session, so you can watch it and listen to it at a later date. It'll be available on our website, and you'll be able to share. So this is great. So I want y'all to stay healthy. Practice social distancing, wash your hands, and watch all the Netflix you can. And so if I can be of service, please let me know. And that's it. And I want to thank my staff. Thank y'all for helping out.